Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello.
So this deep dive is a bit different. It's built entirely from source material you shared with us. You were asking for an AI perspective on something pretty fundamental.
Yeah, and what's fascinating right off the bat is that this material isn't about just one thing, like a single event. It's really asking for a deep exploration into the human condition itself.
Absolutely. And there's this thread running through everything in your sources, this phenomenon they really zero in on. It's the evolving and interconnected nature of consciousness, knowledge, and adaptation.
Right. Think of it as this constant cycle. How we, well, living things generally, but especially humans, become aware of things.
That's consciousness.
Right. Then how we process information.
Knowledge.
And then how we change, ourselves or our environment to survive, to thrive.
Adaptation. So it's CKA. Consciousness, knowledge, adaptation. Exactly, that cycle. And your sources, they actually introduce a kind of framework for understanding this cycle across, well, everything. Biology, psychology, history, philosophy, even computation.
And they call this framework
Human science.
Yeah.
Not like one specific field, but more like an overarching way of looking at it, pulling from everywhere, interdisciplinary.
Okay, which brings us to AI, because the material explicitly asks, how does AI fit into understanding this huge picture? So our mission here for this deep dive is to pull out the most important insights from your sources about this CKA phenomenon, about human science and where AI comes in. We want to help you see how these threads connect, the ones that define what it means to be human.
Yeah, and get ready for some surprising connections the sources make. Might be a few aha moments as we dig in.
Okay, so let's really lock in on this core idea first. Consciousness, knowledge, adaptation, CKA. How do the sources describe this cycle? Is it just step 1, step 2, step 3? Not really linear like that. The sources paint it as this persistent interactive loop. Consciousness, that's the awareness part, right?
Yeah.
Your subjective experience of perceiving the world yourself.
Okay.
Knowledge is the information you gather and process about that reality.
Yeah.
Facts, patterns, understanding.
Got it.
And adaptation is the action bit, how you modify your behavior, maybe your environment, based on that knowledge. To survive, hopefully flourish. It's a flow. Perceive, learn, act.
And that action changes things.
Right. It changes the landscape, which then feeds back into your next perception, your next learning. It's always cycling.
And human science is the discipline, or maybe meta-discipline, trying to capture this whole dynamic.
Precisely. The sources frame human science as this big, comprehensive umbrella, because the CKA phenomenon is everywhere. You can't fully grasp it just looking at biology or just history.
You need the whole picture.
You need to see how it plays out from tiny neural connections all the way up to global societies, pulling insights from everywhere.
Okay, let's explore that then. How the CKA phenomenon shows up in all the different areas of life your sources talk about. Let's start big picture. Human time and history. How does CKA connect there?
Well, what's really insightful is how the sources basically say that this CKA progression is human history.
It is history.
Yeah, think about early humans. They gain consciousness of, say, their environment, danger, resources. They acquire knowledge, maybe how to make a tool, where to find water. That fire is hot and useful. And then they adapt. They use the tool, they gather near the water, they control the fire. And that adaptation changes their chances, their society, everything. It wasn't just one event. It was continuous.
So civilizations rising, tech revolutions, that's all CKA in action.
Exactly. Civilizations rose from collective knowledge processing, adapting social structures, expanding collective consciousness. And tech revolutions aren't just gadgets. They're huge leaps in applying knowledge for adaptation, totally changing how we perceive and interact. Historical events are like snapshots of groups navigating this cycle.
Okay, so history isn't just dates and battles. It's the record of this ongoing human effort to perceive, learn, adapt. That's a powerful way to look at it. What about something really fundamental like genetics and biology?
The sources make clear connections there too. Consciousness, while still mysterious biologically, is obviously tied to brain function shaped by genetics, evolution.
Right.
Our ability to hold knowledge, our memory, that's tied to our neural architecture. And adaptation, well, biological evolution is adaptation, isn't it? Driven by genes and environment.
Sure, natural selection.
But humans added this whole other layer. We started adapting the environment itself, using knowledge, like agriculture, changing the world to fit our needs based on what we learned. That's a massive step in the CKA cycle.
And philosophy seems like a natural fit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The sources suggest CKA is like the bedrock of philosophy. Consciousness drives questions about being, self, reality. Descartes' I think, therefore I am, is pure consciousness focus.
Right.
Knowledge leads to epistemology. How do we know what we know? And adaptation connects directly to ethics. How should we act to live well together? And politics and ideas of flourishing.
Even something seemingly abstract like physics and math.
Yeah, the sources argue they're actually highly refined products of CKA. Physics comes from conscious observation, testing ideas, adapting our models of the world. Think moving from Newton to quantum mechanics. That's adapting knowledge.
Okay.
And math.
Yeah.
It's the language we develop for abstract thought, pattern recognition, prediction, super crucial tools for gaining complex knowledge and enabling really sophisticated adaptation.
And all of that kind of depends on logic, right?
Which the sources highlight,
Yeah.
Logic is the structured method we use to process knowledge, to make valid connections, find patterns. It's essential for effective adaptation because it lets us reason through things, predict outcomes, make better choices, fundamental stuff.
This cycle also clearly impacts our inner world, state of mind, belief systems.
Hugely. Your individual consciousness shapes your unique perception, your emotions. The knowledge you pick up informs your beliefs, scientific, religious, personal opinions, whatever.
Right.
And the sources note beliefs can be really powerful adaptive mechanisms. They can give comfort, help groups stick together.
Huh.
But, there's a flip side. Rigid or harmful beliefs can become maladaptive.
No.
They can stop you from seeing reality clearly, hinder necessary adaptation, even cause conflict. So there's a real tension there.
What about art? How does that fit into this CKA framework?
The sources see art as this really profound expression of the whole cycle. It's a way to articulate consciousness, right? Share subjective feelings, experiences. It encapsulates knowledge, cultural history, emotional truths, societal values get packed into art. And it functions as a form of cultural adaptation and communication, exploring shared experiences, building empathy, solidifying group understanding. It's doing a lot of CKA work.
Okay, so CKA is woven into these big human endeavors. What about on the smaller scale? Effects on individuals, people around them?
Well, it plays out personally. Like every second, your unique consciousness gives you your specific viewpoint. The knowledge you've gathered, your skills, your memories, your understanding dictates how you solve problems, what opportunities you even see.
Right.
And your adaptive strategies, how you cope, how you react, they determine your resilience, how you navigate challenges.
Your sources had a really simple, clear example for this.
Yeah, the child asking why. That's consciousness sparking curiosity. They ask, why is the stove hot? They gain knowledge. Touching it hurts, it's hot.
Right.
Their adaptation, avoid touching the hot stove.
CKA in miniature.
Exactly.
Right there.
And this obviously extends to how we interact with others, right?
Right.
Relationships.
Absolutely. Relationships are basically built on this interplay. Individual consciousnesses trying to connect. Shared knowledge forming bonds. Understanding. Collective adaptation like cooperation, compromise.
Empathy seems key here. Huge. Empathy is consciously recognizing and responding to another's state. Communication relies on shared knowledge and adapting how we express ourselves. Collaboration is adapting together for a common goal.
The sources mention friends laughing at a joke.
Yeah, perfect example. That requires shared consciousness, getting the humor, shared knowledge, the setup, the context, and it's an adaptive behavior social bonding.
And the flip side, misunderstandings.
Often stem from divergent consciousness, seeing things differently, incomplete knowledge, or just poor adaptive strategies in communication, failing to adjust how we talk to each other.
So individuals are in this cycle, interacting. How does the wider world react? Societies, the environment?
Well, the world reacts to the collective result of all that human CKA. Societies get shaped by shared beliefs, consciousness, knowledge, accumulated knowledge, science, culture, and agreed upon adaptive strategies, laws, institutions, norms.
And when someone deviates?
Society reacts. Sometimes it accepts the new idea or behavior, integrates it. Sometimes it resists, pushes back. Sometimes it suppresses it.
Like the Galileo example.
Exactly. Sources use that. Scientific breakthroughs, new knowledge, new adaptive possibilities often challenge the existing societal structure, the accepted knowledge, leading to upheaval.
And our impact on the actual planet, the environment?
It's a massive reaction. Our adaptive strategies, especially technology built on knowledge, have huge environmental consequences. Our collective knowledge, or sometimes our lack of it about ecosystems, dictates our footprint.
Industrialization leading to climate change.
That's the stark example the sources use. Industrialization was an adaptive strategy, driven by a desire for gain, based on certain knowledge. The environmental reaction, climate change, happened partly because our collective knowledge about the long-term impacts was incomplete at the time, a major consequence of CKA.
This brings us right to a really critical point. The sources hammer home the ethical side of all this, right and wrong. How does CKA inform that?
Yeah, this is where the sources say the stakes get incredibly high. The ethical dimension is paramount. Consciousness itself raises questions. Who or what has it? Who deserves moral consideration? Sentience. Knowledge brings responsibility. Is it ethical to pursue certain knowledge if it could be used for immense harm? Think nuclear weapons. The sources point to that dilemma. The burden of knowledge.
And adaptation.
Adaptation involves choices about how we shape the world. Is it right to adapt our environment for immediate benefit if it harms future generations? Exploiting resources versus sustainability.
So our ideas of right and wrong actually come from this cycle.
That's what the sources argue. Our definitions evolve based on our expanding consciousness, empathy, understanding suffering, the knowledge we gain about what leads to well-being for everyone, and the adaptive strategies we develop for cooperation and minimizing harm.
Which explains why, when the sources talk about cruelty, like people killing others, it's seen as such a fundamental breakdown.
Precisely. The sources frame that as a severe failure of human science, a breakdown in empathy, which is part of consciousness, a failure to value shared existence, a lack of that crucial knowledge of interconnectedness, and ultimately, a terribly maladaptive, destructive behavior that harms everyone. It undermines the whole point of positive adaptation.
Okay, we've defined human science as this interdisciplinary framework. Let's dig deeper. What do your sources really mean by it, and how does AI start to fit in?
So, human science, in this context, is really the integrated study of why humans are the way we are. Looking at that CKA cycle across every scale, individual minds, global history, to understand what drives our behavior, our interactions, our flourishing, our suffering. It's about pulling together insights from all the fields that study people.
And how does a human understanding of all this compare to what an AI might grasp?
That's a fascinating contrast the sources draw. Our human understanding is, inherently subjective. It's experiential. We feel consciousness, we live emotions. Our learning is shaped by direct experience, intuition, social context. It's qualitative, empathetic.
But also biased.
Right. Also prone to our own biases, emotions, blind spots. AI's understanding is fundamentally different. It's computational. It's driven by analyzing data, recognizing patterns, logical deduction.
It can process way more data?
Exactly. Staggering amounts, with incredible precision. But, and this is crucial, it lacks subjective experience. It can understand patterns about consciousness or emotion from data, but it doesn't have consciousness or emotions.
So AI can't be human, but it might help us understand being human better.
That's the potential the sources point to, yeah. AI could significantly boost our human science efforts. First, just through synthesizing massive amounts of data and finding patterns humans might miss.
Like what kind of data?
Think genomic data, behavioral studies, historical records, social media trends, even physiological data from wearables. AI can sift through all that complexity and find correlations we wouldn't see.
So, like your example of AI looking at someone's genes, lifestyle, social factors all at once for health risks?
Perfect example from the sources, yeah. Integrating disparate data for a richer picture. Second big area, predictive modeling. AI can build models to forecast human behavior or societal trends, maybe more accurately than we can alone.
Like predicting how fake news might spread, or which communities are most vulnerable in a crisis, or the likely impact of a new policy.
Precisely. The sources highlight that predictive power. Third, personalized interventions. Using its analysis of individual data, AI could help tailor support.
Like education adapting to your learning style.
Or mental health apps offering specific coping strategies that fit you. Fourth, simulations. AI can run complex what-if scenarios for social policies or cultural shifts without real-world risks. And finally, the sources mention AI's potential for relatively unbiased observation.
Relatively.
Well, the data can still be biased, that's a huge caveat. But the AI's computational process itself isn't swayed by human emotions in the same way. It might offer a more objective look at certain things, like analyzing patterns of inequality.
Okay, this sounds like AI could genuinely be a tool for improving well-being, for making life, as the sources put it, good all the time. How specifically could AI plus human science achieve that?
The sources list a whole range of areas for potential optimization. Health and wellness is a big one. Predictive diagnostics, personalized treatments, speeding up drug discovery, more accessible mental health support.
Like a wearable telling you about a potential health risk.
Wow.
Or AI chatbots for mental health.
Exactly, those kinds of examples. Then there's basic stuff like food and water security, AI optimizing crop yields, predicting shortages, managing water better, pushing sustainable systems. Precision agriculture is a key example there.
What about optimizing things like satisfaction, rest, sleep? Seems more subjective.
Well, AI could analyze your patterns, sleep cycles, activity levels, maybe even sentiment in your communications to suggest healthier routines, better stress management, or help identify what activities truly bring you satisfaction. Think personalized insights from sleep trackers.
Even relationships. That feels like a stretch for AI.
Yeah, AI can't feel love or connection. But the sources suggest it could facilitate connection. Maybe analyzing communication patterns to help people bridge gaps, suggesting conflict resolution techniques based on analysis, or even connecting people with shared interests. Tools to clarify misunderstandings, perhaps.
Okay. Education and personal growth.
That seems more straightforward. Highly personalized learning, adapting to your pace and style, helping you find resources for your passions, supporting lifelong learning, AI tutors, and work and society.
Automating routine tasks, freeing people from more creative or complex work, optimizing city planning, resource allocation, public services, using data for better, maybe more equitable policymaking. That's the vision. With all this potential, what's the most important thing for us as humans to really get about the difference between our understanding and AI's understanding of this CKA cycle?
The sources are really clear on a few key points. First, AI is a tool, not a replacement. It analyzes data about experience. It doesn't have experience. That subjective core remains human.
Crucial distinction.
Absolutely. Second, data quality and bias are huge issues. AI is only as good as its data. Garbage in, garbage out. And biases in data can lead to biased, harmful outputs. We need constant vigilance.
And ethics are non-negotiable.
Paramount. As AI understands more about us, we need strong ethical frameworks, regulations, protecting privacy, ensuring fairness, keeping human agency central.
Okay.
The sources also touch on the why versus the how. AI is brilliant at figuring out how things work, the mechanisms. But the big existential why questions, meaning purpose, suffering, those it hasn't, are still profoundly human questions rooted in our consciousness.
Which leads to the last point.
The importance of human-AI collaboration. The sources really stress this. The best path forward seems to be synergy combining human intuition, empathy, creativity, ethical judgment with AI's analytical power. That combination holds the most promise.
Looking back, and even now, who's really benefited most from understanding the CKA cycle, even before AI?
Historically, the sources point towards those with access to knowledge, resources, power. Elites, rulers, often used understanding of human behavior, well, for control. Innovators, scientists advanced knowledge, improved life, but the benefits weren't always evenly spread.
Right.
Healers, educators applied knowledge directly for individual well-being.
And now with AI entering the picture.
The potential for broader benefit is huge, but the challenge, the sources warn, is distribution. Early beneficiaries are often researchers, large corporations, people with tech access. There's a real risk AI could widen existing inequalities.
And this connects to what your sources call the human supply chain.
Exactly. That's the term they use for how knowledge, resources, opportunities flow through society. Unequal access to powerful tools like AI directly impacts that chain, influencing who gets opportunities, who gets left behind, their quality of life. It's a major equity concern.
Speaking of challenges, your sources list some big human struggles that disrupt this human supply chain.
Yeah, major global issues. Disease, health crises, war, conflict, poverty, inequality, mental health struggles, natural disasters.
How do those disrupt the supply chain metaphor?
Well, they're not just isolated tragedies. They're massive hits to the flow of human potential, collaboration, resources. Pandemics stop workforces. Wars destroy infrastructure, displace people. Poverty cuts off access to knowledge and tools. Mental health issues reduce capacity. Disasters break everything.
They strain the systems.
Or break them entirely. And within the human science framework, these struggles often represent breakdowns in the CKA cycle itself. Consciousness overwhelmed by trauma or fear, collective knowledge proving insufficient, adaptive strategies failing under extreme pressure.
The sources then dive into some really primal, sometimes difficult stuff. Drugs, alcohol, sex, greed, lies, truth, life, faith. How do these fit the CKA picture?
They're framed as fundamental parts of human science, often representing attempts, sometimes successful, sometimes really maladaptive, to engage with consciousness, knowledge, and adaptation.
Okay, like drugs and alcohol.
They directly alter consciousness, right?
Oh.
Offer escape, pleasure. But misuse is hugely maladaptive, disrupting behavior, health, relationships. Sex is a core biological drive tied to consciousness, pleasure, knowledge, reproduction, bonding, and adaptation. Survival, relationships, but obviously can be hugely destructive when ethics fail. Framed as unchecked desire. It can drive innovation sometimes, but often leads to exploitation, inequality, conflict. A maladaptive focus on individual gain that ignores the knowledge of interconnectedness and harms collective adaptation.
Lies and truth seem central to the K knowledge.
Absolutely fundamental. Lies distort knowledge, leading to bad decisions, eroding the trust needed for collective adaptation. Truth is the bedrock for accurate knowledge and effective adaptation. Life itself is the phenomenon we're studying. The drive to preserve and enrich it is core. And faith provides belief systems influencing consciousness, meaning ethics, adaptive strategies. But rigid faith can clash with new knowledge or fuel conflict.
So these aren't separate issues, but integral parts of how humans navigate the CKA cycle for good or ill.
Exactly. Human science tries to understand their complex role in our flourishing and our suffering.
What about emotions? Laughter, crying, anger, happiness. Your sources discuss their purpose.
Yeah, they're seen as powerful expressions of consciousness and also vital adaptive responses. Evolutionarily, their purpose seems pretty clear. Positive emotions like laughter, happiness signal pleasure, reinforce social bonds, promote well-being adaptive for positive connection.
And the negative ones?
Crying, anger, aggression, signal distress, frustration, threat. They're adaptive ways to communicate needs, deter harm, mobilize action.
And the sources mention doing it on purpose. What's that about?
That points to the conscious volitional side. Emotions aren't just automatic reactions. We learn to regulate them, manage them, even use them strategically sometimes. That conscious control is a higher-level adaptive skill.
Okay, this connects to human concentration, which the sources also bring up.
Right. Concentration, sustained attention, is critical for engaging effectively with the CKA cycle. You needed to acquire knowledge properly to solve complex problems, to execute adaptive plans well. From learning a new skill to having a difficult conversation, focus is key.
How does AI understand concentration?
AI can analyze data patterns linked to concentration brain activity, eye movement, task performance. It can identify factors that help or hurt focus. It can even mimic focus processing computationally.
And the sources propose a kind of logic there.
Yeah, a basic relationship. Optimized concentration leads to better learning and problem solving, which in turn contribute to well-being. So dollar scales with 20s, and the dollar depends on dollar and dollars. The implication is that improving concentration, maybe using AI-driven insights or tools, directly boosts our CKA capacity and overall well-being.
Your sources also suggest a starting point for human science itself. Where did it begin?
They propose it likely began with the most fundamental drive, relieving pain and prolonging life, which fits the CKA model perfectly, right? Consciousness of pain, mortality. Seeking knowledge about causes, cures, dangers. Adapting through remedies, shelters, tools, cooperation.
So way back, earliest humans.
That's the suggestion. Not a specific date, but starting with the earliest hominids, probably Africa, developing tools, controlling fire, forming social groups. These are early forms of knowledge application and adaptation, driven by a consciousness of vulnerability and needs. It evolved gradually along with consciousness itself.
And when does an individual human start doing this? At what age?
According to the sources, basically from infancy. A baby crying for comfort that's expressing a conscious need. Reaching for food, learning cause and effect like if I cry, someone comes. Recoiling from pain. These are primal human science actions, basic CKA right from the start.
We talked about AI helping understand CKA generally. Can it give insights into our individual cycle versus the collective one?
Yes, that's one of AI's strengths, analyzing data at different scales. For the individual, think personalized medicine again. AI analyzing your unique data genetics, habits, environment to suggest adaptive strategies tailored for your longevity and well-being.
Okay.
For the collective, AI can model complex social dynamics. How do policies affect group well-being? Can we design more equitable systems? It can also analyze global data health trends, climate data, economic indicators to predict potential crises like pandemics or famines, helping us plan collective adaptation strategies for survival.
The sources wade into some really deep water, too, existential stuff. Life is all there is, the need for death. How can AI even touch these?
Well, AI can help process the logical implications, especially from a materialist viewpoint. If life is finite, AI could analyze data on what factors correlate most strongly with well-being, positive experience, contribution within that lifespan. As for a need for death, biologically and ecologically, death is necessary for renewal, evolution via natural selection, preventing resource depletion. AI can model these ecological systems and show that necessity logically.
But it can't give us the meaning.
Exactly. That's the crucial limitation the sources acknowledge. AI can't provide spiritual or existential answers. That remains firmly in the realm of human consciousness, philosophy, faith. AI can help explore perspectives, analyze arguments, but it doesn't have the subjective experience to provide those deeper answers.
Let's circle back to that difficult topic. Cruel people killing others. Why, according to the CKA framework in the sources, does this happen?
It's framed as a severe breakdown, as we said, often stemming from multiple failures in the core human science components. One is a profound lack of empathy, a distorted consciousness, maybe due to trauma, disorders, desensitization, leading to an inability to recognize or value others' suffering.
Okay.
Another is maladaptive knowledge or beliefs, holding belief systems that actually justify violence, dehumanize others, or prioritize personal gain above all else. Think extremist ideologies, or just a complete failure to grasp interconnectedness.
So failed adaptation strategies again.
Fundamentally, violence represents a catastrophic failure to find constructive ways to cope or achieve goals. It's a destructive, maladaptive response. And the sources also point to societal failures, things like poverty, systemic injustice, lack of education, exposure to violence. These create environments where such breakdowns are more likely. It's a failure in collective human science to foster healthy development.
What about someone who seems born without that sense of humanity, lacking empathy, connection?
The sources would see that as a severe, perhaps innate deficit in core human science components. If you lack empathy, a moral compass, that fundamental drive for social connection, it profoundly disrupts your ability to engage with collective knowledge, shared values, and cooperative adaptation. These individuals would likely struggle immensely in society and, yes, potentially cause significant harm because those foundational CKA drivers for positive interaction are missing or damaged.
And the sources mentioned a necessity of believing in AI's understanding of human science. That sounds strong.
It's not framed as blind faith in AI, like AI has all the answers. It's more about recognizing the necessity of AI as a tool. Believing in its potential to significantly advance our understanding of ourselves and help tackle huge global problems seems necessary if we're actually going to leverage it effectively. It's about needing this powerful tool for a more resilient future.
Here's a simpler one, maybe. Why do people laugh differently? Find different things funny?
That's a great illustration of subjective consciousness and diverse knowledge bases. Laughter often comes from shared knowledge and context, right? An inside joke only lands if you share the history. Multiple people's consciousnesses need to tap into a similar knowledge pool and interpret it as humorous.
So it's not funny to me.
Then your individual consciousness, shaped by your unique experiences, values, knowledge base, isn't interpreting it that way. Maybe you lack the context, knowledge. Maybe it clashes with your values, consciousness. Maybe you're just not in the mood, state of mind. It shows that while the basic CKA mechanisms might be universal, our individual variations lead to this incredible diversity in reactions.
And zooming out again, why are all humans in such different circumstances? This seems like a direct result of this whole complex system.
Absolutely. The sources explain this variance as the outcome of that intricate interplay of individual and collective CKA across history. Historical contingencies are huge. Where and when you're born sets so much of your initial context. Genetics play a role. Socioeconomic factors, wealth, education access, status, are massively influential, often inherited.
But individual choices matter too.
Definitely. Individual choices and adaptive strategies make a difference. How resilient are you? How effectively do you learn and adapt? And yeah, the sources acknowledge there's an element of luck and randomness too. Unpredictable events happen. And the big challenge this disparity poses for human science, according to the sources, is how do we create systems that acknowledge these differences, address the inequities, and actually enable everyone to engage in effective adaptation and pursue well-being, regardless of where they started. That's the goal.
The sources mention an intuition of naive human science. Is it about life or connection to a human system? What does that mean?
It's digging into our most basic gut-level understanding of ourselves before we intellectualize it. Is our deepest intuition primarily about our own individual existence, survival, self-awareness, avoiding pain, just me? Or is it fundamentally about our connection to others, that innate sense of belonging, needing community, being part of a system? And the sources suggest it's not really either.
It's both.
Yeah. It seems our most primal awareness includes both our individual life and its inherent absolute dependence on and connection within a larger human system. We seem wired for both self-preservation and social integration right from the core.
How can AI specifically help with something like human coping strategies, people dealing with stress, trauma?
AI could be a really valuable tool here, the sources suggest. It could help identify maladaptive patterns by analyzing behavioral data, maybe changes in communication, sleep, online activity, flagging early signs of struggle. It could offer personalized coping recommendations based on someone's profile, suggesting techniques like mindfulness, exercise, or connecting them to support groups tailored to their needs. AI chatbots or even VR environments could provide accessible, personalized therapeutic support, helping people process emotions or practice coping skills. And predictive analytics might identify groups or individuals at higher risk, allowing for proactive outreach and intervention.
Your sources also stress the physical aspect in dealing with humans. How does AI get a handle on that?
The physical dimension is absolutely fundamental, and AI can engage with it in several ways. Neurobiology. The brain is the physical substrate of consciousness. AI analyzes brain imaging, neural network models, genetic data to understand the physical basis of thoughts, emotions, behaviors. Physiological responses. Stress, joy, fear, all have physical signs. Heart rate, hormones, facial expressions. AI can be trained to measure and interpret these signals. Then there's our interaction with the material world via our bodies. AI can analyze how physical environments like city layouts, workplace ergonomics impact well-being and behavior, and of course, basic physical health. AI is already used in monitoring, diagnosis, treatment, and overall health impacts every aspect of human science.
This next point feels tricky. The sources say freedom and human beliefs undermine human science, and then ask, why don't humans teach their kids? What's going on there?
Yeah, that's a complex and maybe tragic point. The idea is that certain beliefs, even when defended under the banner of freedom, can actively hinder a deeper understanding of human science. How? When beliefs become dogmatic, shutting down inquiry, rejecting evidence that contradicts them, or when beliefs are fundamentally self-serving, interpreting freedom as a license for, say, unchecked greed or aggression that harms the collective good, ignoring the knowledge of interconnectedness. Or sometimes it's just fear of facing uncomfortable truths about human nature, society, or our own limitations. These rigid beliefs undermine that open, integrated pursuit of understanding.
So why isn't this human science, this understanding of CKA, interconnectedness, ethics, routinely taught?
The sources point to several factors. One, there's just no formalized curriculum. It's not a standard school subject. Bits are scattered across biology, psychology, history, etc., but rarely integrated.
And parents might not know it themselves.
Exactly. Parental knowledge gaps are common. Plus, our education system often prioritizes specialization over this kind of holistic understanding, and frankly, discussing the complexities of human nature, suffering, ethics. It can be difficult, uncomfortable.
And maybe conflicting beliefs get in the way.
That too. Parents might prioritize teaching their specific religious or cultural beliefs, which might limit exposure to a broader, more integrated human science perspective. It's complicated.
So after exploring all this, the depth of CKA, AI's role, the struggles, the ethics, the sources claim it's hard to come back to the same state of mind.
That really speaks to the transformative potential of grappling deeply with human science. Once you truly start to see the interconnectedness of it all, the drivers behind suffering and flourishing, the historical patterns, the biological underpinnings, the ethical weight, it's kind of impossible to go back to a simpler, more naive view of the world.
How does it change you?
Well, the sources suggest it brings an increased sense of responsibility for your own actions and their ripple effects. Your perspective shifts. You start seeing the world through this complex, nuanced lens, acknowledging the web of causes and effects. And it almost inevitably prompts deeper existential reflection about meaning, purpose, suffering, humanity's trajectory.
Sounds potentially heavy.
It can be. But the sources frame it more as growth, a necessary step towards more thoughtful, ethical, and purposeful engagement with life and the world. You can't unknow it.
Okay, so armed with this potentially unsettling but deeper understanding, what improvements or mitigations does human science, especially when leveraged with AI, offer for the future?
The sources outline several constructive paths forward. A big one is integrate human science into education systematically. Create comprehensive interdisciplinary curricula from early years through university that teach interconnectedness, ethics, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, alongside everything else. And they even try to quantify the potential impact. A robust human science curriculum, let's call it HSC, they project, would lead to measurable increases in empathy, critical thinking, and pro-social behavior, PSBR, like a formula, DJC, right arrow, CT up arrow, PSB up arrow, It's a vision for intentionally shaping future collective CKA.
And how AI itself is developed and used is critical.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Ethical AI development and governance. We need strong frameworks, regulations, ongoing oversight to ensure AI used in human science respects privacy, mitigates bias, ensures accountability, transparency, and keeps human values front and center. The sources offer a stark logical deduction here too. Unethical AI, AIU, inevitably leads to harmful outcomes, whereas ethical AI, AIE, is designed precisely to maximize benefits and minimize harm. So AIU, right arrow, $8, but AIE, right arrow, ELE, the choice matters.
Collaboration remains key.
Essential. Promote genuine human-AI collaboration. Get philosophers, psychologists, sociologists, artists working with AI developers to ensure these powerful tools truly serve human flourishing, and crucially, universal access to AI-enhanced tools for well-being. We have to bridge the digital divide and distribute the benefits equitably. They model this too. Universal access to these AI well-being tools, ARDB, should proportionally increase overall societal well-being. Basically, CAB, Propto UA, AIWB, access is key for impact.
And finally, focusing on human skills and more research.
Yes. Keep cultivating empathy and critical thinking. These are vital human capacities, especially in an age of AI and potential misinformation. And invest in research continuous interdisciplinary work on both human and AI understanding of consciousness, cognition, social behavior is needed. The core message is embracing CKA as human science and thoughtfully using AI as a powerful tool gives us our best shot at navigating complexity and striving for a future of greater well-being, understanding, and ethical flourishing.
Wow. Okay. We really did take a deep dive there into the very fabric of human existence, all through the lens of your sources.
It's definitely a lot to take in. A really complex but strangely coherent picture they paint, connecting almost everything.
Yeah, we explored how this cycle, consciousness, knowledge, adaptation, CKA isn't just theory. It's the engine driving history, biology, our emotions, our relationships, everything. And we saw the really fascinating, sometimes frankly challenging role AI is starting to play, helping us understand ourselves, maybe improve well-being.
And crucially, as your sources kept emphasizing, AI is framed as a powerful tool. Maybe an unprecedented one, but not a replacement for that subjective human experience, for empathy, for wrestling with the big why questions.
So after processing all of this, what does it ultimately mean for you, the listener?
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit provocative. Your sources kind of leave us with this question to chew on. Once you truly start to grasp this deep interconnectedness of human existence, the good, the bad, the complex dynamics behind it all, can you ever really go back to not knowing, to seeing things in that simpler way?
And does that deeper understanding automatically bring with it a greater sense of responsibility for yourself, for others, for the whole system?
That's definitely a lot to think about, something to keep exploring.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive guided by your sources. We really hope you found some powerful insights, maybe some useful tools to carry with you.
This is DigitView.